us geeks are a weird bunch. We are a weird bunch in the sense that we can be cliquish at times, even amongst geekdom. And I found something. Something has happened within, I want to say, the course of society in the past 20 years. Now, maybe this has been going on before and I just wasn't paying attention. I was a lot younger. There's a lot of things I wasn't paying attention to 20 years ago that I'm definitely keen on now. And what's happened is there is this ideological purity test. Now, I will tell you, I make no bones about this. My political beliefs, my cultural beliefs, my beliefs in general do not align with the mainstream, mainly because I am a believer. I am a Christian who believes the Bible. That in and of itself puts me at odds with mainstream thought on most issues. I'm not going to say all issues. I'm not going to make it seem like, everything's against me, but to some degree, everything is against me. Here's why I say that. Sometimes I think we have ideological purity tests in order to enjoy a certain thing. For instance, and I couldn't imagine what it would be like to run a business and be popular on YouTube or social media at the same time, because people have you in a certain box, and if you don't operate how they believe you should operate, then your criticism becomes almost unreasonable at times. And this is something I found on the internet. I want to go to this video posted by Eric July today, owner of the Rippaverse. And one of the reasons I want to go to this video, I think people put standards on him believing he was going to do certain things with his company that he never said he was going to do. And the reason this particular issue matters so much to me is because I noticed this with my own YouTube channel. There are some comments I get. Now, I don't get many comments. I'm not a big channel, but every now and again, I'll get a comment where a person is appalled that I take a certain stance on a certain issue, or I like a certain geek thing that I shouldn't like. My biggest example was me commenting on certain Marvel comic books and DC comic books that I actually like, and someone felt like I should never say anything good about these companies at all. This was a slight to independence. Anyway, I want to get to this video from Eric July and go over some of the things that he says, because I think they're very important.
Founder and owner of the Rippaverse, the world has become so polarizing that people have grown accustomed to companies taking political stances or being used as political platforms. So I don't necessarily get upset when people automatically assume that our company plays by the same set of rules, especially considering that I myself am a libertarian political commentator. But I want to remind you why I started this company. Go look at the first ever video that we released. I wanted to fix problems that plague the industry.
Now, I want you to pay very close attention to how he attacks this issue. Most people might be under the impression that when he launched his comic book company and released iSum #1, that it was going to push libertarian values, anarcho-capitalist values, which he holds to. But really and truly, it's just a fun comic book. It's not a perfect comic book. It is not without flaw, and is not the most groundbreaking thing I've ever read in my life, but it is fun. It was enjoyable to read, and it made me want to read more. I have missed this from comic books because so many companies are so heavily focused on this is our political stance, or this is our political stance. And they just abandon whether the comic book is fun and whether the story is actually any good for sake of shoving whatever message down your throat. And really, he's trying to do the opposite. Whatever his views are, irrelevant. Is the story good? Is the book fun? And I think his books are fun. Again, people put words in your mouth when you say things. Saying you enjoy his books is not saying that these are perfect books, greatest books you ever read, nothing like them. No, but they have a specific basic element to them that really gives them a broad appeal, in my humble opinion.
Both creatively and economically. So our goal was never to make the same exact mistakes, just having a slant to a different side of the political spectrum. That defeats the purpose. Our rule about social views and real world politics within the company is simple. Leave it at the door. We will sell our products to anybody of whatever affiliation.
I like this. This is really focused on the product itself and not the views of the person who made the product. Now, again, I have said this before. It is impossible for whatever views you hold dear not to in some way make their way into your creation. But to make that so if his deal was, I want to create a book for libertarian anarcho-capitalists, and that's who I want to market this to, I would understand if that was permeated all through his book. But his goal was, I want to make good comic books that people enjoy. I believe as far as what he's saying right here, he has met that goal. I do not get the impression at any moment when I'm reading his books that I'm being preached to about some political ideology. I feel like it's a story that's standing on its own merits. Now, some people do not like his stories at all, and I don't think that's a problem. You're not going to like everything. And I've said this before. I won't beat that dead horse. I'll move on with the video.
You're crazy if you think everybody that works for the Rippaverse is an anarcho-capitalist like me. As long as you are qualified, you can work for the Rippaverse.
Now, I believe the reason he is addressing this issue, people are lobbing what I would consider unfair attacks against his company. And I've seen it on Twitter. I don't really want to get into the names and the people and all of that. I don't think that's necessary. But just the issues themselves are, I think, necessary to cover. People take issue with the fact that there are certain people that he has employed that believe or hold to certain beliefs that are not aligned with the conservative way. But the funny thing is, me personally, again, this is me personally, you might read and maybe catch something I didn't catch, see something I didn't see. It's very possible. When I read his books, all I get is a comic book creator trying to tell a hero story with some villains in there and some action, and it's fun. That's what I get. I don't get a political agenda. So clearly, his stance is permeating through his company and people get it. Hold whatever view you want to hold, but don't beat people over the head with your views. Just create good comic books that people will enjoy. Will everybody enjoy? Obviously not, but some people will.
One condition: don't be a hack. Have whatever views you want, just don't let it get in the way of business, and don't disrespect our customers. Believe it or not, this used to be a norm in American culture. I believe that's also why the Rippaverse works so well. Employees are free to be themselves.
And I believe so. I could be completely wrong about this. Some of the attack, some of the critiques, legitimate critiques, people just don't like certain things. Look, there's some industry professionals that have their issues. They understand things I don't understand. I won't get into that. But I could be wrong, but I think some of the attack and hatred is somewhat envy. I think it might be. Now, I could be wrong. You have this dude who was not a comic book creator. He was just a political commentator, artist, contributor at The Blaze. And then he decides to create this comic book company. And in my humble opinion, has had wild success. There's some people, I guess, pushing the idea that he's not successful and the company is, not doing great things. I mean, I that's not what I see. But again, maybe there's something I'm missing. I'm not infallible in my knowledge, and it's definitely possible for me to have oversight on something. But I think why his venture is working so well is exactly what he said. He has abandoned the thing that everybody is doing. And look, I think there's some people on the right that are doing this same thing. This purity test when it comes to content and what you enjoy and or don't enjoy, who you employ and or don't employ. And look, I get it. I understand we've been beat over the head with this philosophy for so long. I think that on both sides, right and left, I don't think people realize sometimes that they're doing this. Like, yo, whatever. Look, I have worked with all kind of people, all kind of beliefs at a company, and we all have a goal. We do a job, and whatever our beliefs are ideologically, politically, are irrelevant to the task we're doing for this company. It has nothing to do with that. And I think that's what he's getting at. Like, yo, whatever you believe and do outside of here, as long as you can come to work and you know what you're doing and you put good quality, you're not perfect, but you put good quality into your work, you put your heart and soul into this, yo, you can work here. Yo, I like that view. Maybe I'm wrong about this.
On their own watch. They don't fear being punished or losing their job because someone disagreed with them online. Look, I get
that's a big deal. That's a big deal. People are terrified to have their own opinions because it's like, yo, if I say this, is my company going to fire me? If you can work for a company and yo, my opinions are my opinions, but this has no bearing on what the company does or what I do at the company. I'm going to do my job to the best of my ability. And whatever my political or ideological views are, this is not my company. I am here to do X task, and X task is what I do.
Get it. Your upbringing will give you a set of traits and values that make you unique. It may even influence your art or storytelling.
And this is exactly what I said. It is impossible for who you are not to inform what you do. But there's a difference between that and beating people over the head because you want to force them to think like you. There's a difference between you having a unique personality and that unique personality coming out in your creation and you forcing this thing into your creation so you can beat people over the head, so you can try to convince them to be like you. Man, when people go, especially, let's take comic books specifically, since that's what we're talking about. If I go to a comic book and let's say there's somebody that's more left-leaning and they're writing a book and their character just happens to be a vegetarian, I don't care. But it would be a difference if that character, and I'm not saying all people who are liberal are vegetarians, I'm just using that to make a point. But if that character in every panel is trying to beat me over the head with you shouldn't eat meat, that's when I'm like, okay, you've gone too far. I was fine with your character being what your character is, but now that you're trying to beat me over the head with this, I don't want to read anymore.
We are not saying that you should be amoral or without principles. We just don't want this to get in the way of our stories or our business.
And you see, this is the problem, in my humble opinion, that, and I try not to make this a negative channel. I try to approach this as positively as I can. But as I said before, I'm not going to stick my head in the sand like an ostrich, like I don't see what's going on in an industry. When you have these established characters and you have people who are determined to change these established characters. Now, I'm not saying stories can't be modified. Backstories are modified all the time. Things are changed. That happens. If it's done organically, I understand. But when you have like drastic shifts, you want to make this character gay for no reason at all. If you created a new character and that character happened to be gay, I would argue that nobody would probably take issue with that. Now, me personally, because of my ideals and my beliefs, I don't care for that. But I'll be honest, most people, if it was just a character you created and people found out they were gay in passing, they wouldn't care. But when you take established characters and then you want to change them and make them gay, then that enters the territory of you trying to force your beliefs and beat people over the head. And this is the problem. I will say, at least me and most of the people I talk to, this is the problem that we have.
Audience should never feel like they are being beat over the head with some current day
That's exactly
political
what
view.
I said.
If other
Exactly
people
what
in
I
their
said.
businesses have a different approach, that's fine. I'm just telling you what our vision is with the Rippaverse. So no matter what the motives of others are or how they attempt to paint us as, the Rippaverse is a fun sandbox for everybody that wants to get into our universe. Here's some things to consider. We care about comics and are very much a customer-driven company. We've shown that you don't have to be a part of the mainstream to have a profit.
I've seen criticism thrown at the Rippaverse as a company because, oh, there's an editing mistake here, there's an editing mistake here, so you don't care about your customers. And again, I'm going to tell you my standard, especially for a new company. This may not be everybody else's. I am not an artist. I'm not a creator. I do not expect perfection. Maybe if I was an artist, I would be a different kind of judge because I'm an artist. I've been doing this for years. There's a certain level of perfection I expect. But I've never picked up a comic book and expected no mistakes at all. I expect the content to be good. I have read comics and I felt like the artist drawing that comic was decent, but maybe not at the level where he should be drawing this main character. You might have heard me mention that with the reboot of X-Men Days of Future Past. I think the artist, I can't remember his name, who drew the comic book, wasn't terrible, but in my humble opinion, his art wasn't up to par to be doing an X-Men book. Just my humble opinion. Again, as a fan, I looked at it and I didn't like that art style for X-Men. Again, just my opinion.
Venture. The internet, especially social media, is not a proper representation of real life. A lot of the aggression is centered.
Yo, this is one of the reasons why when I see like massive hatred and or love for something on the internet, I don't assume that this is an actual sentiment out in the rest of the world amongst people who are not really consumed with the internet. Look, I create content on social media, so obviously I pay attention to the internet, but I realize this is not like flesh and blood life. This is just people posting stuff online. Not always a accurate representative of what's actually going on when you turn this computer on, turn this mic off, and walk outside your door.
Around fake narratives that people simply aren't dwelling on in the real world. So thanks to all of the customers and fans of the Rippaverse. And if you don't like my politics, you can still buy my books.
I like that. I like that. You may not like that. You may think it's phony. But yo, I think this is real. If you don't like my politics, you can still buy my books. I honestly believe that his goal was not to create a libertarian comic book or a right-wing comic book or an anarcho-capitalist comic book. I think he was just a fan of comics, understanding, look, I had never once growing up when I was reading comic books and chalk this up maybe to the naivety of a young teenager. I never knew what the artist thought, what the writer thought. Never once did it enter my mind. I wonder if they understand the issues that's going on in the hood in Brooklyn. I never thought that. Never one time. The only thing I thought when I picked up a book is, yo, is this art gonna be dope? And is this story gonna be banging? That's all I thought about. And I really think at its core, this is what he is seeking to get back to with the Rippaverse.